Hello and welcome back to another FPL transfer tips video. We are just after the international break, so there is not too many transfers going on in terms of how it usually is with a couple of 100,000. There isn't a lot of transfers being made. However, we do still have quite a lot of transfers. I believe we've got 6 players to look at today. Now, in terms of last week, a bit of a mixed bag again. We did kind of expect this. We did say last week that it probably would have brought down the average season score. We've now dropped down below 70% because of a lot of our transfer tips last week were for the long term. For example, McNeil had him as a buy because they've got great long term fixtures. However, they did have Newcastle in the last game week, so wasn't really expecting him to get a massive haul like he did in game week 6. So yeah, again, bit of a mixed bag. We have dropped from 73% down to 68%. So we've got 6 players this week that we can hope that are going to do quite well, and then we can obviously boost that rank back up. So let's get into the first player. So first up, we're looking at one of the most surprisingly high point scorers over the last few game weeks, and that is James Justin. I believe he's scored 2 in his last 2 matches, and he is pretty popular for transfers in this week. He's just about 150,000 transfers in, only 4.6 million as a Leicester defender. Isn't looking likely to change price again before the deadline, but again, you can see why he's been brought in. You know, he scored 2 goals in his last 2. The upcoming fixtures are pretty decent on paper with Southampton, Nottingham Forest and Ipswich. However, he is one of those players that isn't going to be content. Like, he's not got the stats to be able to continue up that form. So if we switch over to this screen here, we have got him compared to other defenders under 5 million. So we've got 4.9 million defenders up against James Justin. And in terms of XG, he's sitting 18th so far. So there is 17 defenders under 5 million which have a better expected goals than Justin. Now, Justin's obviously got 0.31 XG for the entirety of the season, and he's scored 2 goals, so he is hugely overperforming, and I really don't expect him to keep that up in future game weeks. Now, when we're looking at the expected assists, it's even worse for him. He's sitting in 60th, so there is 59 defenders under 5 million who have a better expected assist ratio than Justin does. So obviously he's picked up an assist as well this season. Really don't expect him to be continuing with that form. Obviously Leicester do have some pretty decent fixtures, but we can see by their defences they are the second worst defence in the league so far this season. So even against the Southampton, even against a Nottingham Forest and an Ipswich, you're probably targeting the strikers from there. You know, if you've brought Liam Delap in, you're probably considering this Leicester fixture as one that he could easily score in. So I probably wouldn't be looking at bringing in Leicester defenders because I don't think a clean sheet is going to be very likely. Obviously, in terms of points, he is sitting at number 1 right now because he has got the 2 goals and assists under his belt, but I think that's just obviously a purple patch. Can't see him continuing that form for the upcoming game weeks. Next up, we have another popular defender who has been brought in 122,000 times so far this week, and it is Ibrahimovi from Liverpool, sitting at 5.2 million, so he is a little bit more expensive. I think I would be a little more inclined to pick him if he was maybe sitting at about 4.5 million. He obviously is absolutely nailed in the Liverpool defence, but I do think he is another avoid this week. You know, they've got very difficult fixtures over the next few. Chelsea, obviously, on very good goal scoring form so far this season. I don't think Liverpool keep a clean sheet in that game, and then obviously they've got Arsenal straight after that, where Konaté's only predicted to get 2.2 points. So yes, he's a good cheap option into the Liverpool defence, which could be a decent pick in a couple of weeks in the future. But for right now, even Brighton isn't an easy fixture. It is classified as an easy fixture still on the fixture difficulty rating, but it is one that potentially Liverpool could keep a clean sheet, but I wouldn't be buying him now to like expect that in a couple of weeks' time. So I don't think Konaté's going to do too well over the next few weeks. I do think he's a decent pick to keep an eye on when the Liverpool fixtures get a little bit better, but for now I think he's definitely an avoid this week. Now, moving on from the avoids, we've got our first keep of the week, and that is Emil Smith-Rowe. We are past his period of difficult fixtures, obviously having Man City and stuff in previous game weeks. He's now coming into a nice little run. He's got Aston Villa in the next game, Everton after that, and then Brentford after that. So games where Smith-Rowe could do really nice, and he is pretty highly sold off this week, which is quite surprising. I believe he's like 5 of his next 6 fixtures are classed as green fixtures, so to see him being sold off so much is a bit surprising. But 5.7 million, you know, one of the cheaper midfielders in the game, one of the good budget options. 114,000 transfers out, which I do think is pretty surprising. But when we look at his stats, again, we're looking at him in comparison with other midfielders at around his price range. So for this one, we're looking at midfielders who are under 6 million. For XG, he's still sitting pretty decently. You know, he's sitting in 7th place, which is pretty respectable. And considering, again, you can see his fixtures down the bottom for the next 5. Everton, Brentford, Wolves, 3 defences that really are not too great at all this season. So XG wise, looks like a pretty good pick. Expected assists, he is down in 24th, so he's not as high for this. He's at 0.78 over the course of the season, which is pretty low, but again, the XG is still pretty decent, and at the end of the day, he's essentially classed as a budget midfielder at this point, so I think he is still pretty decent, and he's still sitting in 3rd place for midfielders under 6 million. I do still prefer the likes of Dwight McNeil. You know, he's probably got easier fixtures on paper over a longer period of time, and his stats are a little bit better than Smith-Rowe. But if you've got him already, maybe you want to fit in the likes of Saka, Palmer, Haaland, Salah, all the premiums, and you want to just go for cheap midfielders. I think Rodgers, McNeil, Smith-Rowe could be a decent way to do that, and I do quite like him as an option. So if you've got him right now, I definitely wouldn't be selling him anyway. In terms of buying him, there's probably better options, but if you've got him already in your team, he's 100% a keep with the fixtures that he's got in the next few weeks. Now, moving on to his Fulham counterpart, we have our first buy of the week, and it's Raul Jimenez. Now, he is 0.1 cheaper than Smith-Rowe, and for me, I think he's a much better pick if you can afford that extra striker spot. So he's only 5.6 million. He's been transferred in just over 100,000 times so far, and again, same fixtures as Smith-Rowe. You know, he's got a nice little run over the next few weeks. Obviously, since he's the striker, he's going to be more likely to get some goals, and as we move on to his stats, we are taking his stats only from the last 4 matches. So obviously we've had 7 game weeks so far in FPL. The first 3 of those game weeks, it was Muniz starting as the striker for Fulham. So over the last 4 is where Jimenez has got his starts, and again we are comparing him to strikers who are below 6 million, so around his price range, and he's absolutely blowing everyone out the water over the last 4 game weeks. So sitting at number 1 for XG of forwards under 6 million, sitting at number 1 for expected assists, at over double Evanilson in second over the last 4 weeks, and of course in points as well, he is also sitting at number 1. So he's absolutely the best cheap budget forward that you can get right now, and again a really nice run of fixtures over the next few weeks. You could potentially say maybe not get him this week if you have maybe a Calvert-Lewin, obviously playing against Ipswich is a good option, but I think next week when you've got that run of fixtures with Everton, Brentford, Palace and Wolves, Jimenez could really do well over those few games. So potentially if you wanted to hold off, you could wait until next week, because Villa isn't the easiest fixture in the world, but I still think he's a good buy if you're looking for a striker to get in and maybe save some budget on maybe like an Isak or something like that, and then afford someone like a Cole Palmer, Saka, Salah, those kind of players. Next up we have Bukayo Saka. Now, if you've been keeping up with the international games, he obviously came off with an injury during the England game against Finland. However, it has been confirmed by Lee Carsley that it wasn't a serious injury, and he's expected to be fit for this week against Bournemouth. So surprised to see he's not actually been sold as much as you would expect him to be, and he's actually been bought in quite a lot at 200,000. Now, he does have some pretty tough upcoming fixtures. I think for this week, obviously playing against Bournemouth, he would be a keep, but I wouldn't be buying him at this point in time. You know, he's got a lot of difficult fixtures with Liverpool next, Newcastle after that. Can't really see any big hauls coming from him other than potentially this weekend. So if you've got him, definitely a keep. Wouldn't be selling him. There's nothing to worry about the injury. Obviously, if there's more news that comes out that he could be missing or could be playing off the bench, probably would look to sell him because I don't think he's one I'd want to keep long term. For right now, obviously, I think the Bournemouth game is still classed as a decent one for him. It is now labelled as an orange fixture on the fixture difficulty rating. However, still think he could do quite well. You know, I think he's still returned in every single game so far. He's getting a lot of assists. He is assisting more than he's scoring, which is quite unfortunate for someone at 10 mil. You do want to be getting some goals. I don't think he's had any penalties at all so far this season. But yeah, hopefully we can get some more goals from him. I think he's a keep this week. Again, another player I probably wouldn't be buying this week, but I definitely think you can hold on to him for another week and then potentially look to move him on next week. And then finally, rounding things off before we look at our summary, is Amadu Onana. Definitely someone that I want to be selling this week. I was kind of scraping the barrel with this because a lot of the players that are being transferred out this week have been covered in the last one or two transfer tips videos, so I don't really want to look at them again. But Onana has been sold off 118,000 times, and again, 100% a sell. I think we looked at him in the early weeks. We said definitely avoid him after he scored 2 goals because he wasn't going to be able to keep that up. It's another situation like Rodri last season where he scored a couple early on, was bought in by a ton of people. A defensive midfielder in FPL usually doesn't go too well, and once again we're seeing it again with Onana being sold off pretty massively. So he's sitting at 5.1 million now, isn't looking likely to change in price, but obviously he's not kept up that goal scoring record and he's now being sold off. So nothing really to do with the fixtures, it's mainly just the fact that Onana's not going to be getting you a lot of points every single week, and I don't really think there's much else to say on that. I think if you've still got him, definitely a sell this week because you can move to someone like a Rodgers who plays for the same team and is a lot more attacking. Maybe if you've got a little bit of money in the bank, you can move to McNeil instead. So this is how it looks for this week. A lot more favourable fixtures this week, so hopefully we can see a little bit of a rise in the seasonal success rate this week. Obviously we're not too bothered on this because this is just the instant success rate, how players or how the transfer tips have performed after that one game week. I think long term is going to be a little bit better. So this is how it's looking for this week. We've got 6 players, we've got 1 buy, 1 sell, 2 keeps and 2 avoids. Let me know what you think in the comments, and if there's any other players, maybe they weren't highly transferred in or out this week, if there's any players you want to know about, make sure to let me know in the comments and I'll give you my opinion on it. So if you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like on the video, make sure to subscribe if you are new, and I will see you all in the next one.